right, everyone. Welcome to session number 2, class number 2 of the instructor's course, teaching the introductory grade behavior breakdown class. Thank you all for joining us again as we try to move through some of this information. Let's talk about the agenda for the evening. Tonight, we're going to do a review of session 2. I'm actually going to go through the material itself. So session 2 consists of lying and the 3-phase intervention. Your session number 1 covers your paradigm shifts, it covers your stress model, it covers hyperarousal, so it's some basic foundation level information. Session 2 gets into lying and the 3-phase intervention, and we'll go through that. If you've got your instructor's manuals along with you, you can follow along with me. If you have your participant manuals, you can follow along on that too. We're going to go through that, and then if you go to, after that, we're going to shift over. We're going to talk about marketing your class. We're going to talk about looking at your flyer and looking at this hot new flyer that Helene has put together for us. And Helene sent me a text saying that I had muted her out. But Helene, you're not showing up on my line, so I'm not sure.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, no. See, you muted yourself.
No.
Yes, I didn't mute you. You muted yourself because I just muted the group. Yeah, see there? All right.
I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, okay. Then we're going to talk about getting your flyers out, your GBB marketing support, and then on the side, and then what's next. So that's going to be our agenda for this evening. And that being said, let's shift over to these wonderful curriculums that, these wonderful manuals that Helene put together for us in session 2. Now remember, when you're doing these classes, there's a couple of real goals here, and one is that the beauty of teaching an extended class, meaning the 4 weeks, is that you have an opportunity to create a sense of camaraderie, a sense of community with your participants. So you can actually, and Anne has been teaching the Beyond Consequences classes, the 10-week classes out in Colorado, in Denver, so she knows what that feels like when that group gets together and they recognize one another and they get familiar and how good that feels. And what's important about that is you really help build support. It's different if you're just doing this in a one-day course. You just can't build that kind of group cohesion that you can build when you're doing it over the 4-week period of time. The other real powerful goal is that in building that cohesion, in building that small community of support, you're actually creating the opportunity to have people go out and actually talk about what they're getting from the class, and therefore bring more people into your class the next time. You might not get that as well when you're doing the 9 to 3 because there's just not enough opportunity to develop connection and relationship. But doing that 4-week class, then you can have other people get excited about what you're doing. They can go out and they can talk to other parents and other professionals and pull them in. What I really like about that is that then you're building this community in your own community, and it's all based around you because as the teacher, as the instructor, you're the expert. You're the expert in the area, so people start to look at you that way. So you start, that's one of those ways that you become recognized in your area as the go-to expert. I really like that aspect of this information. And then that just kind of follows itself. From that period of time, you can continue to build your community. You can continue to support other parents and other professionals. You can continue to empower, and you can just grow and grow and grow and grow. And not everyone wants to be the expert. Some of you don't really consider this as your profession. We have some parents in here that are wanting to teach the class, as well as therapists. But even for parents, to be a beacon of light, a beacon of hope, a beacon of encouragement and empowerment and support for other parents can make a significant difference and then give us an opportunity to really bring this love-based model to your area. So those are some things for you to keep in mind as you are teaching this class. Now, as we move into session 2, as I said, this is our lying and 3-phase intervention course. We're going to start off the course by talking about the 3 core principles and then summarizing the stress model. Principle number one is that all behaviors arise from a state of stress. In between the behaviors and stress is the presence of a primary emotion, love and fears. Through the expression, the processing, and the understanding of the fear that you calm the stress, diminish the behavior. You want to have, by the end of that 4 weeks, you want to have your participants have that stress model memorized. You want them to be able to just recite it. Just to have the power to recite it makes a big difference. You know, you're really wanting to embed this paradigm shift as much as you possibly can to create that sense of understanding. So you want to pull that in so they can really start to internalize and really start to think about children's behaviors differently. And so we want to look at that foundation that's driving those negative behaviors as stress. And your entire course needs to be interactive. So you need to talk about these principles. You need to talk about, all right, let's look at this. Just principle number one, all behavior arises from a state of stress. Give me a behavior. You know, let's talk about lying. Let's talk about defiance. Let's talk about aggression. Let's talk about your child didn't want to go to bed last night. Let's talk about you being upset with your child this evening even, just picking them up from school. You know, let's talk about that. Let's process it. Open up that communication because, again, that's how you're building that group cohesion. You're building that community. So you just, you know, it's free-flowing. You're not there to give answers. You're not there to fix people's problems. You're there to support and to lead them to deeper self-understanding. That's your greatest overarching goal, is to support and lead them to a deeper sense of understanding so that they can start to see things differently in themselves and start to see their child in a different light. And then principle number two, there are only 2 primary emotions. Of course, we want to spend a great deal of time talking about these things because this is how you get the paradigm cemented. This is how you get that understanding cemented. You're building on this. You know, you don't have to go anywhere else in your session if you don't feel like your group has really gotten this point. And the value of having a small group is that you can really take the time to make sure people get it. You know, people don't understand love and fear because they don't understand fear. They don't see it within themselves. That which you cannot see in yourself, it is nearly impossible to see within someone else. So in order to get them to be able to make that shift, to come to that understanding, you got to stop. You got to help them explore that and realize that as love and fear being the 2 primary emotions, we want to really look at fear, but not fear from the standpoint of just being scared. Okay, just being like a scary dog. You know, it's fear can occur. It's like stress. Through any of the sensory pathways. Stress leads to fear because stress causes your cellular system to constrict into survival. So your body knows 2 states. It knows surviving and it knows thriving. Those are the only 2 states your body knows. So in essence, your body-mind system only truly knows love and fear, that energy. And so you think you can experience stress and fear through what you see, what you smell, what you hear, what you touch, what you taste, the temperature of your body, even your proprioception system. When you get off balance, that can cause a stress reaction within your body system. And then make that clarification as well that it's a stress reaction, it's not a stress response. See, that's that linguistic focus. You're focusing even on the words that you're using, and you should slow down and take your time in really analyzing and really processing with your participants what this means and really looking at it. Okay, what does it mean to experience stress through something you smell? Have someone give an example. Or you give an example. You know, you're driving along, you smell a skunk. Immediately you have a stress reaction. That stress reaction may not cause your amygdala to go into some deep level of trauma reaction, but it can definitely cause an alarm. It does definitely cause an alarm within your system. Okay, you see something. There's another stressor which leads to fear. You know, you get too hot, or you get too cold, or you touch something, or someone touches you. All of those sensory pathways have the ability to cause you a stress and a fear reaction. And then you make the connection to, let's see how that ties into trauma. Because trauma is any stressful event which is prolonged, overwhelming, and unpredictable. So when that individual, specifically that child, but I really want you to focus on not just the child, I really want you to focus on getting the parents and getting the professionals, whoever's in your class, getting those participants to see this information within themselves. So help them to redirect to themselves before they give an example about their child. Or if they give an example about their child, also encourage them to give an example about themselves. Because that's how they make the connection to their own stress and fear. When they don't do that, it's too easy to project our own stress and our own fear onto our children. It's too easy to misinterpret our children's behaviors as manipulative or willful or what have you, rather than really being able to understand it at a core level. So really think about emphasizing and having some discussion around fear and the way fear shows up. Now, the other thing is love. Now, that's a little different concept, and it's one equally that you need to spend a lot of time with, as much as you possibly can. Love is the space in between. It's all around us. The only thing that keeps us out of the experience of love is the experience of fear. You know, have people stand up and move. Maybe, you know, you can be creative. Move in front of a complete stranger and look and sense their body and pay attention to that experience, and have them talk about when their children's behavior show up, how much they love their children, but also at the same time, in that very moment, how much that stress sets in and moves them into fear and knocks them out of love. Have them talk about that. Have them really look at that. And as you feel a little more comfortable, I'd really like at some level in these intro classes, just for you to introduce the concept of oxytocin. Okay, because I really believe that that's going to make so much of a difference overall in people's understanding of this model, that when they can, and yes, granted that this is just an introductory class, but when they can start to understand that their experience of stress and fear moves them out of the capacity to engage to create oxytocin for themselves and engage oxytocin for another individual, it's making it really hard for them to create a loving, regulated relationship with their child. It's making it really difficult for them to bring about regulation for their child if they're stressed and if they're afraid. And it starts with them. It starts with you and I. If I'm stressed and afraid, my oxytocin receptor is turned off. So what do I need to do to calm that? And that's, I mean, that's one of the real value of having that book by Susan Kachinskas, The Chemistry of Connection. You know, looking at that, reading it, just thinking about it. And I think all of you should be thinking about that day to day anyway, especially when it comes to your own professional practice, in your own life, your own relationships, is how that oxytocin plays out in our lives as well, especially when you talk about oxytocin being the love hormone, the hormone in our brains that makes love possible. So you spend some time really examining with your audience, with your participants, the difference between love and fear. You know, you want to develop an introduction to the model, but an introduction is like establishing some really core foundational principles, really helping them grasp some things at a core level. And that's really what the Great Behavior Breakdown is all about. I mean, I gave the 3 principles, which I reiterated over and over after every session if you have the audio program. With the audio program, every session started with the reinforcement of those 3 core principles, because everything was based on that. Now, we didn't do that in the book because that's how it started. The first chapters start that way. But in the audio program, Every behavior starts with those core principles. If you don't have the audio program, you might want to pick it up just to give yourself that reinforcement of the things that we talk about. Not that you're going to be talking about them in the introductory class, but when you move to the advanced classes or when you start doing some of the other more extended classes, then you're going to want to have that, that repetition, so you're bringing that information more to a conscious level. But I don't want you to just have it at a conscious level. I don't want you to just have it at a cognitive level. I want you to have it at a heart level. I want you to have it in your gut. I want it to be your paradigm. When people ask you questions, I want you to answer them from this paradigm. I don't want you to have to be cognitively trying to create something out of this philosophy or this model or this theory. I want you to have a heart for it. I want you to have a gut intuition for your response, and that so much of that is repetition, repetition, repetition. And then principle 3, that children with severe behaviors do not consciously choose to act out that behavior. These behaviors are driven from a highly unconscious place. Very important. Talk about how easy it is to view a child's behavior as intentional, to view it as purposeful, to view it as conscious. Have parents give examples of that. When their child, they lied or they stole something, and how the look on their face and their body language, the posture, their tone of voice, everything indicated that they were consciously aware of what they were doing. And then take it back step by step by step to help them see when the child became stressed. Help them see when the child started seeking self-soothing in the behavior, or seeking security in the behavior, seeking certainty in the behavior, significance in the behavior. Help them start to see it so they stop looking right at that behavior and they start looking underneath the surface. So you're pulling these principles in so they can start to look and they can start to think about things differently. You want to challenge them to think about things differently. And then you move into lying. Now, that's one of the more common behaviors that we deal with. A lot of parents deal with lying. Just about every parent who's got a child with any kind of attachment issues, any kind of stress sensitivity, any kind of fear, is going to have a child who tells lies at some level. So it's a behavior that's pretty common that you can really help the parents hone in on, but at the same time, it's a behavior that you can take, and by helping them see the underlying dynamics of that specific behavior, you can help them start to generalize on how they can use those same responses with other behaviors. Because ignore the lie, don't ignore the child isn't just about lying. It can be, ignore the behavior, don't ignore the child can be about any behavior, really, when you get right down to it. So let's talk about lying for a minute. You go through it, everyone lies at some point. Everyone tells a white lie to the big hairy lies. We lie because it is a stress reaction in our brain. We perceive a threat at some level, even if it's a threat that we're not going to be viewed as significantly as we want to. It is a threat at some level. It's if we're afraid that we're not going to get to eat at some level, and that goes back into that trauma stuff. I always say that when a child with trauma history lies, he's lying because he is defending himself from the perception that the worst thing in his life that has ever happened is going to happen again. So what he's doing is he's defending himself from the perception that the worst thing that has ever happened in his life is going to happen again. That's why I call it the hidden shotgun theory. That it's like, and this is an example that you can use in your class, and this is one that I've used for years in my classes, especially with lying, is to have them stand up, have them go in a straight line, facing the back side of each other. They stand up there, you know, they spread across the room. They're facing each other's backside. You have them stand there, and you have them hold up their hand in the form of a pistol and touch it to the back of the head. You know, they take that little finger. You go ahead and point your finger with me right now because I'm I'm pacing like I always do with my fingers stuck up in the air. And, you know, if you've been in my office before, you know I've got all these windows, so if my neighbors are peeping in on me, they're seeing me walking around with my hand raised up like a gun. I don't know, they probably think I'm crazy. But they're actually, let's see if I can point, if I can see any neighbors peeping in my windows tonight. I'll point my little play gun at them. I don't see anybody. There's a lot of old people around here, so I'm sure someone's peeping in my window. Not that old people are the only peepers in the world, but I'm going off on a tangent. Anyway, you have everyone in a straight line. You point your finger at the back of their head. You have them touch the back of the other person's head. It's always interesting when I'm in these kind of group things, and you know they do this kind of thing where you got to do something, you got to touch someone's head. It's always interesting to have the person behind me determining whether or not they really want to touch my head or not. You see all those dreadlocks, they're like, I'm not so sure I want to put my finger in there. But have them touch that head and have them hold that gun there, and then you say, you walk to, you know, you just kind of walk to each person. I'm going to ask you if you told a lie. Or I'm going to ask you if you took that chocolate chip cookie. And that's a gun behind your head. And if I find out that you took that chocolate chip cookie, that gun's going to go off and you're going to die. The hidden shotgun theory. The child's worst fear, the worst thing that ever happened to them is going to happen again, which means if I don't convince you that I am telling you the truth by lying to you, I'm going to die. And you will, it's rare that you will go up to one person in that group of adults and say, Ken, did you take the cookies? Ken is going to look at you and he's going to say, no, absolutely not. I did not take cookies. Because no one in their right mind would say yes, because the fear is you're going to die. And help them understand what experience children have when they go up and say, did you take the cookie? Or did you throw your homework away? Or did you hit your brother? Or did you go out of your room when you weren't supposed to? Or did you, you know, not do whatever you're supposed to do? It doesn't matter. It can be a big one. It can be a little one. It doesn't matter, especially for traumatized children. They've got to lie. And then what is our traditional approach? Don't you lie to me. You tell me the truth. You better tell me the truth. If you'll just tell me the truth, it won't be as bad. And what are they going to do? They're going to lie. They're going to lie. They're going to lie. They're going to lie. And then the parent gets frustrated and frustrated and frustrated. So the model says ignore the lie, but don't ignore the child. Meaning that in that moment, that child's thinking is confused and distorted. That child is not thinking clearly. That child is in survival. Joseph Ledoux says, in times of stress, our thinking is confused and distorted, and our short-term memory is suppressed. So the child is in survival, and their short-term memory is shut down, so they're not thinking clearly, and they can't remember. And as far as they're concerned, you're a killer, and you're going to kill them if you find out. So they're going to lie. So the principle, the practice, the application says, ignore the lie, but don't ignore the child. Take a deep breath, because you're going to have a reaction as the parent. The moment that child lies, oh my God, the first thing you want to do is tell them about themselves. I watched a psychologist do this. I was working with a psychologist, her family in their home, and her son was lying about something. She just sat there at the kitchen table, and she just tried to convince him to tell her the truth. And I was like, oh my gosh. You know, I thought she really understood this stuff. But no, I mean, she was like, come on now, just tell me the truth. And I was like, no, don't do that. He's going to lie to you. And, of course, he did. So you ignore the lie. You take a deep breath. Okay? Take a deep breath. And this is where I really encourage parents. And, you know, you got parents for 4 weeks. For 4 weeks. So this is where I really encourage them. Want your child to lie. In the course of this class, hope and pray that your child lies about 10 times. at least, because this is when you get an opportunity to practice and you get an opportunity to come back and have support to work through it until you really get it. So you want the child to lie. So see, automatically you don't have to be reactive. You can be responsive. You're just waiting for them to tell a lie. You know, you set $1 on the counter and walk away and just hope they walk by and take the $1 just so you can try it. You want that practice. You want that repetition. And so you go to the child, you say, did you take my $1? The child says, no. Take a deep breath. Because, see, the child's confusion and distortion says, this gun is going to go off in the back of my head. If he finds out I took that $1, I'm going to die. So you breathe. You don't want to risk that. That's a hair trigger. I mean, that trigger's so sensitive. You want to just, I mean, you might even jump back and take a deep breath. You know, and then you got to connect to your heart. And you got to, you know, remember, you know, keep your own confusion and distortion down. Remember that the child is in that terrified place. He's afraid he's going to die right now. You don't want to get stressed out and go running up on him and telling him to tell you the truth. Or say, I put that $1 there. I just knew you were going to take it. You don't want to do that. So you got to connect. And then you go to him and you say, wow, Johnny, we're going to be okay, man. We're going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. And then you leave it alone. See, that's the part parents have a really hard time with. Have a really hard time with leaving it alone, walking away. Walking away, just moving away after the lie. You walk away. You're giving him time to calm down. You're giving his brain an opportunity to realize that he's not going to die. You're giving him an opportunity to put that gun down. So you got to make time for that gun to be laid aside, because that's the only way you're going to make a difference. So you give that gun time to be laid aside. You wait a half an hour, or you wait an hour, whatever you need to do. Some parents might need to wait a long period of time. You know, it's like the one example I gave that you have in the manual is the woman I was doing the consultation with. She was telling me about her 5 or 6-year-old who lies to her all the time. And I said, well, next time he lies to you, what I want you to do is ignore the lie. She's like, oh, no, I can't do that. I was like, well, who lied to you? I mean, that was like my first response. Who lied to you? And she said, my dad used to lie to me all the time. But see, in that moment, she's reacting. There's no healing can take place as long as she's in that spot. No healing, so the first work has to be with her. So you only hope that you get a participant like that, because that's really going to help you make this point. You know, that's really going to help you help someone connect to their emotions and to their feelings, and you know, you can process that with them. Because everyone else is learning. They're watching you. They're learning. So you're in the midst of that, and then you help them process some of that so they can separate their child from their father or whoever the perpetrator was. So see, you give yourself an opportunity to separate those reactions. You come back to Johnny a little while later when you can be calmer, you catch him doing something, whatever, and you say, Johnny, you know what? I love you. See, you got to walk away. You got to wait a half an hour for an hour just to be able to shift back into the emotional place to say, I love you. You might be so sick of this kid that you don't want to tell him you love him. You want to go up and knock him across the head. You want to go up and just strangle him, just like out of the blue. They're playing with Barbie. You want to just go up and grab him. Rah! You got to give yourself time to get into that place. If you can't get into that place, stop. Don't do anything. That's how much the parent makes the difference in the dynamic. If they can't get to that place, they don't do anything. They stay right where they're at. And guess what? If they need to come back next week and have done nothing except just ignore the lie, then that's what they need to do. That's how important it is that they get the understanding. The understanding is the most important thing. Nothing else matters beyond the understanding. I don't care if you spend 4 weeks and you throw the manuals out the door. And all you do is focus on the understanding, the understanding, the understanding. You got to be that passionate about wanting people to get the understanding. That's what's going to turn them on. That's what's going to get them inspired. That's what's going to motivate them to really look for this model to make a difference in their life. So when you can get to that place, you go back to Johnny and say, Johnny, wow, you know what, man, I love you. And it makes me sad, and it just scares me when you tell me a lie. When you tell me a lie, not when you lied to me, or not. Now, just tell me the truth. None of that. It just scares me when you tell me a lie. You got to get connected to that, because it makes me feel like you don't trust me, and if you don't trust me, I can't keep you safe. And I want to be able to keep you safe. I want us to feel safe with one another. I want us to be okay. And you stay with that. You stay connected in that place, and then you ask the child, do you understand? And the child says, yes, I understand. And then you walk away and you forget about the lie. See, the lie is not important. Because, see, the child's already saying, what lie is he talking about? Which one? He's already thinking that in his head, so you leave that for him to worry about. See, that's working on the internal instead of the external. When you leave the child to wrestle with the guilt of having told the lie or any number of lies, when you leave them with that to wrestle with, that's working on the internal as opposed to the external. That's creating an opportunity for oxytocin. That's creating an opportunity for regulation. That's creating an opportunity for healing. That's why it becomes so powerful. This little formula, I've had parents use it and literally have to use it one time, and their children have stopped lying. And I've had at least 3, 4, 5 parents who've done that. And that might not sound like much to you. But one intervention against years of doing the same madness, I think that's powerful. That's darn near miraculous, and that's the power of love. See, love has that kind of healing power. And you all have seen this. You've been doing this work, for a period of time, for any amount of time. You've seen this. In fact, in the next journal, this month's Inner Circle journal, Harold Crawford and his wife submitted a story about their daughter. They've taken this child in the course of 1 year. They brought this child further than she had gotten in 16 years of her life. In 1 year. Is that a miracle? No, that's the power of love. It's the power of love. And so that's what this information has the power to do. That's what this information has the power to transform. Just this little 4-week course that you all are teaching, you're going to transform some lives. You have the ability to be able to do that. So,
Ryan, you've got a question.
Okay. Let me see.
It was Diana. She put it down, I think.
Okay, Diana, if that question pops back up in your head, just you feel free to there you go. All right, Diana Hurtado, you're up. You there? You got a microphone showing, so you might have to be on a telephone. We'll come back to you, Diana. Okay. So I think that covers. Does that cover lying in your book, Helene?
Yeah.
Okay. So that covers lying. There's a couple stories there. You can talk about your role play, your process. You just keep going. Then let's talk about the 3-phase intervention. All right, the 3-phase intervention. Reflect, relate, and regulate. Says you'll discover that when you come from a place of regulation, you're more comfortable with your child's extreme behavior than you thought you would be. That's right, because when you're in a place of regulation, you're in the present. You're not reacting out of fear. You're not reacting from the past. You're not obsessing about the future. So you're approaching it in the moment. And listen, 99% of the time, and I've never had it happen to me, no one has ever died in the midst of any severe behavior. I mean, in the 12 years, 13 years that I've been doing this work, no one's ever died in the midst of any extreme behavior. Never had anything tragic happen. Never have anyone's lost a limb. No ears have been cut off. Nothing too extreme has occurred. So I think that most of the time you're going to be pretty safe. So when you're facing the extreme behavior, here's what the parent has to understand. The first thing you have to do is to reflect, and let's just illustrate this with a story. The most common stories that I use, and in time you'll have your own stories, you might already have your stories, is the mom who had the daughter who used to flip out when it was time to take a bath. And she'd go in, she'd say, honey, it's time to take a bath. The little girl was like 9 years old at the time. She's now 17 years old. So this is a story I've been using for a number of years. The mom, 63 years old at the time, adoptive parent, go in and tell her daughter, 9-year-old daughter, it's time to take a bath. 9-year-old daughter flip out on the ground, kicking and screaming. Mom would jump on her. Had been reading some books on holding therapies and would hold the little girl down, basically restraining her until the little girl would be exhausted. Then Mom said she'd take her into the bathroom. She'd see the water and she'd flip out again. And Mom, would say basically, she's getting in. It's my way or the highway, and she's going to get in the tub and she's going to take a bath. And she said I'd put her in that tub, kicking and screaming. Whether I had my clothes on or not, she was going to get in that tub and water would be splashing everywhere, and I'd finally, get her washed down, and we'd both fall out of the tub exhausted. Then she said, you know what? She didn't want to go to sleep. After that, she wouldn't want to go to sleep. So Mom had emailed me and said, what can I do about that? And my suggestion to her was, because I want to really see how much Mom was bringing to the table, is the next time your daughter next time you have to give your daughter a bath, you walk into the room, you basically say, it's time to take a bath, and she starts flipping out. I want you to sit on the bed. I want you to take 3 to 10 deep breaths. I want you to just track your body, and then I want you to write me back and let me know what happens, because I want Mom to get in touch with how she feels. And so Mom said she didn't think that was very sound therapeutic advice, but fortunately she was willing to try it anyway. She called me back, a week or two later, called me on the phone. I still remember the conversation. Hey, you remember that little technique you told me to try with my daughter? I was like, yeah. She said, well, I went in the bathroom and I told her it's time to take a bath, and she started kicking and screaming like she always does. But this time, instead of jumping on her, I sat on the bed. I was taking 3 to 10 deep breaths. She said I felt like a complete idiot sitting there on the bed. And if you know Nancy, her personality, she's such a funny woman. She said I felt like an idiot sitting on the bed while my daughter was sitting there kicking and screaming, throwing a fit. But do you realize that in less than 10 seconds, she completely stopped what she was doing, climbed up on my lap as if she needed a hug, realized that she didn't, and then she went and got in the bathtub? She said that was too much for my old heart. I almost fell over. And that was the beginning of the end of their bath time battles. The beginning of the end. So the first stage in the 3-phase intervention is the first thing the parent has to do is stop and reflect on how they feel. You stop, you take 3 to 10 deep breaths. You ask yourself, how do I feel right now? You get in touch with your own fear. And then you relate by saying to the child, I feel scared right now. I feel worried. I feel anxious. I feel angry right now. How do you feel? See, it's important that you tell the child how you feel before you ask them how they feel. Because by telling the child how you feel, you take away the predictability that they have in trying to interpret how you feel. Because the child will always try to predict how you feel, and 9 times out of 10, just like children, just like adults, will then blame themselves for how you feel. Okay? And you don't want that. So you relate by saying, I feel scared right now. tell me how you feel. And a lot of times the child's going to say, I don't know. When the child says, I don't know, you say, well, I'm feeling scared, and you look like you're feeling, especially with adolescents, you're almost always going to say angry. You never use fear with adolescents because they're not scared of anything. But see, it is not important for me to get you to know that you're afraid. It is more important, this goes back to the understanding, it is more important for me to understand that fear is driving your behavior. That's what's more important. That's how I need to see you. That's how I need to perceive you. I don't need you to believe me. I don't need you to agree with me. But that's what I need to feel and sense, because that changes my perception. That changes my ability to see you as a threat, as not a threat, as safe as opposed to a threat. All right? So you say, I feel scared. How do you feel? And they say, I don't know. You say, well, maybe you're angry. And that's relating. If you're angry, tell me you're angry. If you're sad, what's going on? Talk to me. See, when you reflect, you automatically start the regulation process. When you relate, it takes you another step further. You reflect, you relate, and then you regulate. Regulation happens automatically, and that really ties into feedback loops. The moment you can start to reflect in the midst of that stressful situation, automatically the negative energy starts to change. Automatically, if you can do it. All right, but you might have to start at reflect. And if you got a really out of control situation, you might have to start with protect yourself. You know, if you got an aggressive kid and the kid's coming at you, you just don't worry about reflecting. Go and lock yourself in the bathroom until you get to that, through that anxiety, through that escalation, and that's a whole different dynamic. See, if you got a child who's aggressive, for instance, you don't want to start reflecting when they're already pissed trying to kill you. You want to start reflecting when that negative repetitious conditioning starts to set in. You want to start reflecting when you first sense that tension start to develop that gives way to that negative outcome. Because that's why I say all severe behavior is almost always predictable. If we'll pay attention to it, if we are attuned to it, it's almost impossible that you can't predict it. But sometimes you just got to track it back. You got to go back. You don't just wait and look at the outcome. Remember, it's a process, not an outcome. A to Z principle. So you reflect, you relate, and regulation happens automatically. And again, this is something that you can use, you know, to have a lot of dialogue, to have a lot of process, to get someone to role play a situation of anger or defiance. It can be used in any of those ways. Okay, and then there's an example that I use from the book, which you can share and talk about as well. It's the same kind of thing. It's being aware of our own anxiety, calming it, soothing it, reflecting on it, getting in touch with it, then relating with our child, and then regulation happens automatically. As you can do that, you know, you do that in class, then you will start to create an opportunity for dialogue to occur and for people to have some breakthroughs. And then that brings you to the end of session 2. And so, you know, if I can sit here and go over this information with you guys for, you know, 50 minutes, then with some process and with some dialogue, it's definitely going to take you into an hour and a half, and you got to be able to just monitor that and be able to measure that. So, can you have any? Go ahead, Helene.
I think it's really important in looking at the lying and looking at the 3 R's and looking at, I guess, everything that's going to be coming up in the manual, is that it's important to remember that 80% of everything that we learn is what we see. So to actually practice this and let people see you do this is really important, because most people don't have the blueprints to do that. And then the second thing is, in their practicing, it gives them the ability to do it. And 90% of everything we do is through habit. And then finally, it gives them the ability to feel what it feels like to be in that loving space and to actually engage kids from that loving space. Excellent.
Excellent. And that's the importance of really role-playing the the dynamics and the scenarios, and you go with your gut. The manual, the curriculum is there as a guide. Okay, and your first time that you teach the class, you're gonna want to be trying to stay with the curriculum itself, and that's fine, But the next time you do it, branch out there a little bit, get a little more comfortable, pull an example out from somewhere, come up with something, force people to interact, because if not, they won't do it, and they won't get it. Have everyone stand up and say, we're going to do this, so let's talk about it, because someone is coming there mad already, because someone just had an incident right before they left home, or they just had an incident last night. When you're dealing with these kids, the incidents are not far and few in between. They are regular. They are common, oftentimes everyday occurrences. So I promise you, somebody got something to talk about. So do you have a question on this material that we've covered so far at this point? If you do, just click the little raised hand signal. Diana, if you had a question, raise your hand again. Let me open your line. Okay, I've got you unmuted, Diana. Can you say something? Okay. You've got a microphone showing up, so it's a little, I'm not always certain about being able to interact back and forth with microphones. So I tell you what, I just opened the Ask a Question, so that should show up. So you can go ahead and type in a question, and let's see if we can pick it up from there, since I'm not able to pick you up on the line itself. Does anyone else have a question? You want to raise your hand? Preferably, I prefer that you raise your hand as opposed to typing in your questions. But if you can't, if for some reason I can't hear you, then feel free to type the question in. Okay, doesn't look like anyone else has one. We'll see if Diana's pops up here in a minute. But otherwise, now let's move back over to the PowerPoint. All right, so now let's shift brains, and let's talk about marketing your class. And again, I'm going to be looking for that question, Diana. I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you. Okay, there's your question. Let's go ahead and get to that in just a moment. Let's see. What about adults who have the problem lying? Okay, that's a good one. I like it. The kids sometimes say, but mom and dad lie. Oh. Same thing, in all honesty. Adults lie. An adult telling a lie is really no different than a child. And actually, you can use this formula in the very same way. And let's say, for instance, a child does say, well, what about mom and dad? They lie too. Then that is an excellent opportunity to turn your focus towards the child, take a deep breath, and say, well, Stephen, how does it make you feel when mom and dad tell you a lie? And if you were them, how would you handle it? If you were your mom and dad and they were your child, how would you handle it based on how they handle your lying? And then how do you think that makes them feel? When they handle your lie that way, how does it make you feel? All right, and so you take that, it's no different than what I do with adolescents when I talk about creating narratives with adolescents. When you're telling the story and you're having this interaction, you could role play with a child. For instance, for Diana, who's in private practice, she could role play with the child, and she could be the parent, or the child could be the parent, and the Diana would be the parents acting as the children, and let the child handle it the way mom and dad handle it, and let them see it. Let them role play that right in the dynamic in front of mom and dad, and don't let them interrupt. Just ask them to observe. That would be powerful. That would be powerful. So ask the child how that feels. Get right in there, make that connection. I mean, I think that's just a beautiful thing. How can we ask our children to do something that we ourselves are not able to do? I can't ask you to go somewhere that I'm not willing to go myself. And so it's just really important that you put that out there in that regard. All right, so let's shift hats here for a moment and talk about marketing your class. So Helene has designed these great flyers for you guys. I'm going to get to use my little ink pen. And you are able to add your own information into these. So they've been designed into Word. So the first thing you can do is you add your own picture and you add your own bio. And many of you have a little bio. If you need some help with that, just email that to Helene, and she can kind of help you craft that in a way that sounds kind of dynamic and beneficial. And then you fill in your information that you're going to be using. You just type it in. And this is what you would then, you can use this to post on your website. This is what you can make your flyers out of. This is what you're going to distribute. You can email this to people, especially social services folks. You can email this to them. And when they go and register, they will go to this website. They will register. It will take them to, it'll show the names of the cities of the classes that are being scheduled. They go to register. They'll pick their class. And once they are registered, you will be sent an email confirmation of their registration. So you will get all of the emails for the people who have signed up for your class. As you're developing your own database, you can then take those people who have signed up for the class and you can add them to your database. Now, when you move up to a little different level, in your certification and you're doing this on your own, then that'll change. You won't always go through the Post-Institute. But this is how we can streamline it for all the classes that we're going to have going on. And this is how we can keep track. Everyone can keep track of how many people you got coming. If you lose your registration, you'll be able to contact Helene, and she'll be able to send you an Excel file, an Excel document of everyone that signed up for your class. So this way we can make sure that everyone's getting attended to. But you can take this document, you can post it on your website if you have one. You can print it off. You can print it off in black and white at Kinko's. You can print it off in color if you want. I suggest you print the ones in color that you're going to go and post around. So, let's say you have 20 places you're going to go, like at a school. You'd want kind of a color one. It's going to stand out more. But otherwise, just print them off in black and white, and you hand them out. Mail them, do whatever you feel like is going to be the most beneficial. So each of you can take it and adapt it and change it the way you need to. This information here.
And I'll be emailing that out.
And Helene will be emailing all this information to everyone. Let's see. And then these are some areas that you want to be able to contact. Schools, most schools have a PTA bulletin board, foster care programs, adoption agencies, domestic violence programs, so your courts, anger management programs, places like that. All those are viable resource opportunities for you. Your parenting associations, your support groups. You can get on your internet, you can Google in your area parenting support groups. You can also, online, if you know anyone that has a blog, you can send them the information. Maybe they want to write about it in their blog. Or you can post it in your Facebook page. You can direct people that way. And then churches, especially those that are really big into adoption. I know like in Colorado, the James Dobson place. Now they may be a little too conservative. They're very selective and conservative about what they do and what they support, but they're really big into adoption and foster care. So, churches that are open, take it and encourage them to disseminate it, or even to let you come and speak to their congregation or to the people in their nursery or what have you. So that's what you do with the flyer. So, like I said, you email it, you can fax it. It says we have here. Be sure to identify someone who will distribute the flyer, which is nice if you can find like a supervisor or someone that you can contact ahead of time. But it's not always necessary. Get on there, find some fax numbers, and just fax them to people, and they're going to see it, they're going to get it, and hopefully they'll give it to someone. But if you can get someone, if you can make a contact initially with someone who'll do it, then by all means, get that out. Hand them out to your existing clients, families, friends. Community calendars is a great place. Like here in Hampton Roads, there's a parenting magazine. We can post information there. Churches have community bulletins and calendars that they can do, and then always carrying additional ones with you. And so you never know who you're going to run into, who is leading a support group or who has a child who has some struggles. Local therapists will oftentimes refer, like psychiatrists. They'll refer to classes. Pediatricians will refer to classes, especially when people know that this is free and that there's no cost to the participants except for the book, of course, and the manual if they want to get it. So, that makes a really big difference when people know that, it's not going to be $100 to take the course. That'll really help be able to get the word out. And then we'll also be blasting out to each state. So the people who are in, if you're in California, if you're in Missouri, if you're in Colorado, we'll be sending out an email blast to your state, letting people know that are in the Post-Institute network that the class is going to be taking place, how to contact you, how to register, all that good stuff. And then, Helene, I think you were going to talk about this?
Yeah. The Post-Institute and Associates is pretty much what Brian was just saying, that we'll be sending or advertising broadcasts to your area. We'll send one out ideally within 4 weeks of your class and then another one within 2 weeks of your class. And as Brian is moving around, he'll also be advertising as well. For registrations, it's on the flyer as well, but people will go through the Great Behavior Breakdown website, and you see the address. And then, you discussed some of this, but you'll receive an autoresponder of the registration. It comes with the participant's name and telephone number, and that's always good to have just in case something comes up. Make sure that you email me an address of where you want your registrations to go, what that primary address is, so I have that. And then when you email me your class, so I make sure I have all the information, make sure I have your full name, the correct spelling, the full address of where your event is going to be, and the dates and the times of your classes. And that'll be located on the Post-Institute GBB free website, so when people go in to register for your class, all of that information will be there. Go to the next slide.
Yep.
The other thing that is going to happen is that we are looking for probably hundreds of people that are going to be eventually instructing these classes. Things happen, emergencies come up, we understand that. Just be mindful that it does take time and money, and it costs the program in order to add and delete classes. And it'll be difficult to manage a lot of switching things around. And is there a next slide?
It's there.
What's next is after you've run the classes, you'll become a contracted GBB instructor for the Post-Institute and Associates. This is something that's optional if you want to do it. And what will happen is you'll run a full-day intensive seminar, and what we'll do is pay about $250 per class, plus an additional $10 per person for everybody that you bring in. How this works is after 3 successful introductory classes at about a 95% accuracy, and then we have an approximate goal of about 50 people that are ready to attend the class that costs about $99 a person. I'll come out and we'll do a class together. Ken has already got his together, so should you have that many people in advance, just let me know. And we'll run the class together. You get the training. We'll have another manual, a more intensive manual by then. And after we run the class together, you'll be ready to go, and we'll contract with you to run these classes.
And I think what's also important to add to that is, for this particular aspect of the program, is the base lecture pay. I mean, that's just your base, but there's also your affiliate status, just like with your products and stuff. So when you get an opportunity, when you get to the place where you're doing this, you're actually going to end up having the potential to earn more income just on your affiliate sales of your products than you would even with your base rate for your fee for speaking. So it's something to keep in mind. And then there's also the the ability to affiliate some of the higher ticket items with some of the camp leaders, like parent camps and the multifamily and things of that nature. So that could be a really nice opportunity for some of you. The next slide. That's it. All righty. Well, let me go over here for a minute, see if we have any hands raised. Debbie, got a question?
What does 95% accuracy mean?
Say that again.
What does the 95% accuracy mean?
Meaning that people give you a rating of about 95% approval, that the class went well.
Oh, okay.
Just for your evaluations. And I don't suspect that anyone will have any issue accomplishing that, actually. And if you do, we'll just keep working on it. We'll just keep working on it until we get you there. Okay, so that's the end of this session, and next week we will be talking about session number 3.